Well, if there was really a serious micro payment system out there.
1 Bitcoin.
So Karen, you're joining us. Welcome.
Hey everybody.
Hey, Karen.
How are you all?
Super.
Good.
Hi, Karen.
Good to see you.
I'm super now that you're here.
So I just started the broadcast, and one thing that I think will be useful is should we just whip around and introduce ourselves? Because I think, in theory, I'm kind of expecting people to kind of trickle in, and I'm kind of expecting like people to reach out via Twitter and say, "What the heck are we doing?" And so I think basically what we'll just be doing here is just basically saying, kind of like repeating as people need it, just like what we're kind of doing, which is we're using Hypothesis to annotate this one article. And if you struggle with Hypothesis, another way to do this is to comment on the article itself, because that's a form of annotation. And if you struggle with that, another way to do it is to, screen capture part of the article, mark it up, and share it on Twitter however you want. So the idea that there's multiple ways to do this, but we'll just and the hashtag we're going to use for this is NextPrez. But before we try to introduce the concept any more fully than that, maybe we should just whip around, say who we are. It'll benefit Ramy because I know he doesn't know everybody, but it also might benefit anybody who's viewing. Why don't you start us off, Karen?
Hi, I'm Karen Fassenpower, and I am in the very southeast corner of Arizona, and happy to be here with you all.
Welcome, Karen. How about you, Kevin?
Hi, I'm Kevin Hodgson. I teach 6th grade out in Western Massachusetts.
Ramy, your turn.
All right. My name is Ramy. I'm a former middle school math teacher and also a former high school social studies teacher, both in New York City. I'm now an assistant professor of information and learning technologies in Denver, Colorado, which is how and where I connected with Joe.
Mr. Elliott, you want to go?
Sure. I'm Terry Elliott. I'm an instructor at Western Kentucky University, and helping Joe facilitate this mess.
Yep. And Ian, your turn, last but not least. Oh, you're muted, Ian. There you go. Oh, I still can't hear you. Ian, we have faith that you're going to get that worked out, so I'm going to just introduce myself briefly. Just say I'm Joe. I'm with the Denver Writing Project, and I work in Aurora Public Schools locally here. And Terry, is it okay if I ask you to introduce what we think we're doing here? Although let's let Ian try to introduce himself real quick, see if the sound's working. Nope, not yet, Ian. But we have all the faith in the world, so we're going to keep coming back to you.
I guess the basic idea here is that we have all these annotation tools floating around, and there are some folks out there trying to come up with common annotations standards. And Hypothesis is one of them, and we're wanting to introduce teachers, users to Hypothesis tonight with this particular New York Times webpage, and in anticipation of the State of the Union address tomorrow evening at whitehouse.gov. So tomorrow evening, I'm hoping a lot of people will go to the whitehouse.gov transcript for State of the Union address and go nuts there, and that it will not only be teachers but students and anybody else who's interested in kind of digital citizenship here, I think. So this is kind of an unofficial lead-in, and unofficial, completely unofficial. Jeremy's over there and he's probably saying, "Who are these people?" But and it's very simple. I think Joe already introduced the idea. There are lots of ways to annotate. Everybody here knows that you can do anything from, say, WTF to exclamation point to smiley face or you know, emojis, whatever you want to put in here. But the idea is to see what, you know, we don't really know what's going to happen, right? And we don't know how many people are going to participate. But, you know, we've got enough here in this Hangout to make it pretty messy, you know? So that's basically our lead into this.
Yeah, Jeremy, would you like to introduce yourself since you popped in? Welcome.
Sure. Sorry I'm a little late, everybody. I'm Jeremy Dean. I'm a former high school English teacher. I taught high school for about 8 years and college for about 8 years. And now I've been working in collaborative annotation, first at Rap Genius and now at Hypothesis. And I'm the director of education, so my role is to really try to introduce and support teachers using collaborative annotation, specifically Hypothesis, in the classroom. And I heard Terry introducing the particular, well, both particular sort of events, one annotating this New York Times blog that I co-wrote with Catherine Schulten about annotation on the Times, which I saw some people on and responded to today, but also for the State of the Union address, which would be the first in a series of annotate-a-thons around the 2016 election. You know, this is obviously the State of the Union, it's Obama's presidency, but thinking about speeches and other documents related to the presidency and the election as places for students and teachers to gather and have conversations in the margins of the digital text. And I just have one addendum, which is a little bit awkward, but Terry mentioned whitehouse.gov. I had hoped to use whitehouse.gov, but over the weekend, Genius announced that they'll be using whitehouse.gov, and that actually means that you can use whitehouse.gov to annotate, but I think for the purposes of the project that I think it'll be easier for folks to have a different text, so I'm hoping to send out the New York Times or something like that to just kind of keep it a little bit, not too many people at one website. And the Genius effort is mostly authoritative voices, you know, for politicians and speechwriters. And I don't want those quote-unquote authoritative voices to get in the way of us and students annotating that text. So I'm going to find something different when the transcript gets released. I think I'm going to first look at the NewYorkTimes.com. But that's open to discussion. If people want to, if you really want to make it messy, Terry, we could try to get Hypothesis and Genius going on the same page. But that's the kind of noise that actually Hypothesis wants to cut down by making annotation something that's interoperable, where you could go to, you know, in the future, you could go to whitehouse.gov with Genius, I could go there with Hypothesis, and we could both query and access the same annotations. It could all be part of the same conversation. It's a problem when things get siloed.
Yep. Yeah, so Ian, you want to, should we take another stab, or do you think you might just be our silent contributor? We still can't hear you, but I know that we're going to have the most amazing annotations. We'll keep being patient. Pipe up whenever you like. But what I think we should do now is just kind of launch the activity. And without any further ado, the idea here is that so we'll use the Hypothesis Chrome browser extension. That's what will work best. And we'll get into that article that most everybody should have access to. And essentially what we're trying to do is just see what happens if we all start annotating at once. So if you have problems with the Hypothesis Chrome extension, you can ping me on Twitter. And if you get frustrated, don't get overly frustrated. I would just say other ways to comment are in the comments below. And also, if you want to, if you want to take a screenshot and mark it up and tweet it to NextPres, that's another way to participate. So in general, like, you can persist as long as you want with Hypothesis, and we'll try to troubleshoot for you. But at the same time, comments below are great. You know, annotating any which way you want and using that hashtag NextPres, because we're pointing to this larger project that's a youth civic action project about annotating the web in advance of the next election. So that's all to say, like, let's start annotating.
And Joe, one more thing about this, about the screencasts. If you want to screencast your annotations, Joe can be our cameraman and go back and forth between annotations if you want to.
Right, yeah, does that make sense? So if you're in this Hangout and you screen share with us, what I can do is sort of watch what you're doing and make an interesting video out of it. But don't feel compelled to do that if you aren't comfortable. But like Kevin Hodgson, like, you have to, because you can figure it out.
How do you speed share?
Exactly. No, it's on the left-hand side, screen share, and then
Oh.
it'll take a minute to get the right window, but we'll just tell you when you're good. So here we can watch Jeremy get to work there, and you can see because he's got the extension on, you can see where the text has been highlighted, and now he's starting to annotate.
Shit. Will it pick up a tab though? I don't see any of my tabs and my options for. Interesting.
So what you usually choose, Kevin, is like the whole window.
The entire screen?
Yeah, and then you just navigate where you want to go.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's a bit of an aggravation because
I
you
see.
cannot do this. You can't.
I can't
see
look
what you're-
and
exactly.
when I go there, it's like a mirror, right?
The endless recursion thing with
Yeah.
the carbon
Alright.
shot mirror.
All right. Am I on the site now? Can you see?
Yep, you're screen sharing.
Hmm.
Whereas Terry's time traveling. Oh, now he's screen sharing.
All right. Annotate at will, ad libitum.
Do you want us to be tagging on a hypothesis too?
I think that's the general idea, is tagging next pres,
Okay.
but then also, you know, any other tag that comes up. So if you see something that specifically speaks to you about equity, then you can use our other favorite hashtag.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you guys
Anytime
hear
you,
me?
yeah,
I just wanted to quickly say I'm trying to get out of screen share so you're not looking at yourselves here, but the next pres thing is going to be important as a tag on hypothesis for the Letters to Next President project, because we're going to gather all those next pres, just like a Twitter hashtag can gather all the hashtags. We're going to gather all the next pres annotations and make a stream on our site. That stream will probably be on NWP, maybe on KQED as well. And so that's why we tag annotations next pres. And that's also going to be how we surface documents. So if you're not on this Hangout 3 months from now, you heard about this project, next pres will, the site will surface the texts that have been tagged next pres, and teachers can say, oh, there's a Hillary speech, I'm going to have my students annotate that. So it's both going to surface the stream of annotations around the project, but also the documents that those are on. So we're using it like Twitter in that sense.
so are you saying that we shouldn't use NextPres? Because
No,
it'll
you
be
can. I
confusing?
mean, I think it's all going to aggregate. I mean, I think it's fine to do it, practice for it. I mean, it
Yeah,
might feel
okay.
a little off topic, but actually, NWP, this is really going to be a central doc, I think, for teachers coming to the project as like, what do you mean by annotate? How does it work? And so I think this will be a place that really is a kind of a curricular material for the Letters to Next President. So I'm really glad you guys chose it, and thank you again for doing this in general. Now back to annotating.
Jeremy, in the past, I didn't use the Chrome extension and it worked. Is that because I had that special share link or whatever?
Yeah, you can use a via link,
Okay,
which is just putting via.hypothesis in front of something. I think Joe and Terry have the right idea by pushing people towards the extension, because if you're going to be doing this for 2016 election, this whole year, it's really the most robust way to engage. But for students, in some cases, especially maybe at first, I think it's fine to share a via link and say, here is the State of the Union speech. That's what we're going to be annotating. So if you're starting tomorrow, for example, with kids, just get them on the via link and get them to an annotatable text, and then go. But if you start to become a daily practice, then I'd get the extension.
That makes sense. I got the extension now. I was just thinking about how difficult it can be in schools sometimes to do anything. So
Yeah, and if you can, kids that are working in a lab or working on a school computer or working on most tablets where you don't have a keyboard, the VIA option is the one they're going to want to use. But if a kid's not going to have a computer at home where they can install Chrome extension, then VIA really is the primary means of annotating.
that makes sense.
So this may have never been done before, but now I'm going to do play-by-play describing digital annotation. Because I'm watching Terry, and he's highlighted. Oh, he's responding to one of my comments. And so that's kind of a best practice that I learned by looking at genius.com. Is they said instead of creating a new annotation, like if somebody's already highlighted something, try to respond to an existing comment. So try to build on something as opposed to always starting something new, like sort of when in doubt. I think that's interesting.
Joe, I just did that actually, responding to Jeremy's comment about Twitter as an annotation platform in and of itself.
Nice.
It's interesting because, oops, I see I'm screen sharing you guys. It's interesting because I think the reasons are quite different on Genius and Hypothesis. With Genius, the goal was mostly an encyclopedic reading of the thing, right? Which is something that our students can do in this project. They can do glosses that are more encyclopedic. So that's the reason why they wanted to be additive. If Joe says something, I should add to Joe, and then collectively, like Wikipedia, we'll make a great gloss of that line. With Hypothesis, it's more about conversation. It's about Joe says something, and then I respond. And they're never going to be fused together as one annotation, but those threaded conversations, I think that's the most powerful thing we can get to, is when people are having those conversations. But B, it is possible, unlike on Genius, for me to annotate a line and for Joe to annotate the exact same line. And that becomes less interesting to look at. If somebody just comes to the line and there's 10 people that have annotated it, but they're not talking to each other, then it's not as cool as if I think they're all sort of engaging. But it is okay for Joe to re-annotate something if I'm saying something completely different, or if he wants to annotate a few lines within a larger sentence that I've chosen. So I think it really is kind of one of the first principles of best practices to encourage students to respond to existing annotations, and if they're going to start a new one that intersects with the previous one, to make sure it's a different point or a sub-point.
Elliot.
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome. How are you?
Man, you know what? I'm doing great. Actually, I just finished my my TED Talk rehearsal. I actually forgot I was doing it tonight. So, but I'm still at Starbucks and I'm happy to be here.
Yes.
Good to see you, Al.
Quickly, just beyond saying that you're a TEDx Birmingham speaker this year, but there's more to you. So what else do you know about you?
You said what now?
You're a TEDx Birmingham speaker. Do I have that right?
Yes.
But then, can you tell us who you are and where you come from?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm Al Elliott, 5th grade educator from Birmingham, Alabama. Technology fan, education enthusiast, and yeah. All around good, great guy.
I can vouch for that. So all we're doing, Al, is we're in that text that you're familiar with. We're annotating it, and if you want to get crazy, you can screen share, and then I can click on it. You can see in the video what people are doing if you want to screen share, but you don't have to.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm out look at everybody else's because I'm on my phone and I don't know. I didn't even bring my laptop.
Oh, okay. That's great.
But I'm looking at everybody else's though.
Yeah, and feel free to ask questions and narrate the action too.
Okay.
That's one thing I haven't done is I have not really gone at this from the mobile side, either from a tablet or the phone, and that's something I need to do. I really want to look at. Maybe Jeremy can tell us a little about that.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Been trying to compose this tweet for a while, for this annotation for a while, because I wanted to grab Jack Dorsey's, and it's not working, grab this statement by Jack Dorsey where he's talking about the expansion of the character limit. And he really does, in his language, start to gesture towards annotation. I'll grab the picture in a second. But so mobile, I have to admit, mobile is a lot tougher. Your main option on mobile is to be using that VIA feature that I told you about. But it's really, better to have a keyboard, better to be at a computer. You can certainly view annotations with ease, using VIA, especially if you have the link sort of readily available somewhere on a mobile device. But in terms of composition, A, we just don't have an app yet. Hypothesis doesn't. And B, I'll make a pedagogical justification for that, although we want to eventually, is that I think this is the kind of work that you need to be sitting down in front of a keyboard for. And maybe that's just me and my, composition history and always feeling like I really needed a more deliberate space. I'm sure there's some people that think about paper and pencil that way. But the mobile device is pretty not the best for more sustained commentary. But I recognize that mobile devices are a primary means for our students to be getting the internet, so it's something we're certainly working on developing, but not by the State of the Union delivery tomorrow, I'll say.
I actually saw that the White House has they officially are doing something with annotation. I saw that in Wired.
Yeah, they're using Genius. They're having former speechwriters go over the previous State of the Unions and the State of the Union tomorrow. So they're going to have experts annotating the text.
Yeah, I can't help but think, they got that idea from you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I used to work there, and
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like, wow, we were just talking about that. But that's super cool, though.
Last year, in fact, I did have former speechwriters, not the big names that they got, but some former speechwriters, because on the State of the Union simultaneous last year. But they've definitely gone a lot farther this year, which I think is really cool. It's going to be cool to watch. But I'm really, I feel like I'm excited to see student voices. That's what I'm more interested in. I think this technology is more powerful when people you wouldn't expect are coming there.
Exactly.
Really, you can turn on CNN and see some former speechwriters talking, but you can't turn on CNN and see hundreds of high school students and their responses to this. So that's a different sort of thing.
Yeah, Jeremy, can you expand upon that a bit more? Because that's my kind of initial impression playing around even right now, is that Hypothesis is messier, it's more akin to Twitter and the kind of more egalitarian, distributed way of interacting on Twitter than the kind of sanitized gatekeeping that it seems like a lot of former speechwriters and officials are using to kind of add official knowledge and official information to former speeches. This is a way of kind of democratizing that practice. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Am I kind of reading your assessment accurately?
Well, I mean, I think not just my assessment, but I mean, that's the origins of Hypothesis, really, is that it needs to be a way for folks that are not necessarily in power, that are not, necessarily creating the websites or major publishers that are distributing text. There needs to be a way for those folks to have conversations and get their voices out there. And that's not just about students. I mean, my stake in this is for young people, and I think that's the heart of this project, whether it's the next president. But in general, Hypothesis is about that kind of expansion of, people's voices online, the democratization that you're talking about. And it gets to the point where it's, a lot of those places online, including Genius, are moderated. I'm not sure that they would let student voices come on the Genius page. We could test it, or just somebody could go on and be a troll. But in general, they have moderation in place that could stop people from saying certain things. I'm not sure they'd want to stop our young people, but there are publishers that control the comment sections of online newspapers and magazines, and Genius has an editorial hierarchy as well, and Hypothesis doesn't. And for better or for worse, and we got into this with Terry last time we talked on Teachers Teaching Teachers. For better or for worse, those voices are going to be there, and it's a lot harder to silence them.
Yeah.
And I think it's for better.
Right, of course.
Still trying to finish this annotation. I really want to get a screenshot of Jack Dorsey's tweet into my annotation, and I'm realizing it might not happen.
And what was he saying? I know I was late, but what was Jack saying about the tweets? That he was getting more than 140 characters?
He was talking about more than 140 characters, but I didn't mention this earlier, so thanks, Al, for bringing it back up. I think he's responding to a phenomenon that we see on Twitter where people really are trying to add text, annotated text. So people take screenshots of text, articles online, highlight what they want to talk about, add that as an image to a tweet, and then tweet that. And people also will do that just to sneak in larger amounts of text, right? And so he's responding to that sort of movement, if you will, within Twitter, like the hashtag, a kind of democratic movement for hacking the tool, and saying that they might want to add that functionality, or that they're in the works of adding that functionality. But of course, I think what they're doing there is trying to get closer to annotation, and it's web annotation. It's still not quite web annotation because it's not taking place truly on the text, and that's part of the problem with Twitter and Facebook. Conversation happens there, but it happens in a remove from the documents of the study. At least for the classroom, I think we can understand that as pretty essential to really keep the text close. And Facebook and Twitter, by definition, are away from the documents.
I actually thought about the power of using annotation as a medium itself. Like, somebody actually sent me a very, very long Hangout message, and as opposed to me writing a very, very long Hangout message back, I copied and pasted it and just highlighted what I wanted to talk back about, and that's how I replied. And I actually think it was like fun. Right? Like, it was fun to only talk about, like, this is what's important, and this is what I'm talking about. You said this, and so I'm replying to that. So I think it's like fascinating to use it in that way, just outside of like publicly, right? Like, just actually in a personal message. I found myself annotating something today, and that was cool. That was new.
Cool.
There's something that I can do in other rich text boxes that I'm not quite able to do yet in Hypothesis, and I wondered if we talked about it briefly, Jeremy, but there's a lot of ways to annotate. And some of them are, obviously you can put pictures on there now with Flickr, right? But I'd like to be able to put GIFs, and I'd like to be able to put SoundCloud, and I'd like to be able to put I'd like to have rich text embeddable media, because I think that is a way, the response GIF is the classic way to annotate, I think.
Is that Terry talking?
Yeah.
You can add GIFs and you can add images to annotations in Hypothesis. In the little composition window, there's an image button. The only thing is that you have to go and grab the web address for the image. I can demonstrate how to do that. I just spent some time
I didn't have much luck doing that.
I just did it actually a few minutes ago with a question about the Talmud, and the Talmud is annotation, so it's in there.
But yeah, it's a matter of grabbing the URL for the image.
Yeah.
So it's anything ending in .php .jpg or .gif or .png, you can, there's a little rich text composition button for image, and then you just paste that web address for the image there and it'll show up. So it works for GIFs, it works for images. We don't yet have SoundCloud embed, but it's on my list of demands. So you can actually just paste a YouTube link and it will automatically generate as a video within your annotation. And that, you know, more things like that will follow, embeddable media that just appears in line. But you certainly can add images. I think for me, it was one of the revelations of teaching collaborative annotation on Rap Genius originally was, wow, suddenly my students' writing had these images, and I had to figure out, well, how do I direct them in thinking about the use of images? You know, obviously you can sort of say, this is a reference to Lincoln, here's a picture of Lincoln, I've illustrated my statement of truth with an image, but images can be arguments. And Terry, I think you're right that like reaction GIFs are a language in and of themselves. And it could be an awesome exercise just to use GIFs, but certainly GIFs should be part of the sort of tools, writing tools that students have to respond. And you can add GIFs on Hypothesis. You just need to get the web address for the specific GIF, so not whatever it's, you know, not the web page it's on, but the .gif page that's just the image. And then there's a little button of an image in the annotation window, composition window, that you can press and then paste that URL, and if you save, it'll show up. And you can see some examples. I did one with the Jack Dorsey tweet. It's deep down in a conversation about Twitter on the page.
Yeah, hey, really quickly, hey, Ian, do you want to say hi real quick, and we'll just check your sound?
Am I working yet?
You're working.
Oh my God! Still trying to figure out this technology stuff. It's way over my head. Hey everybody, my name is Ian O'Byrne. I am down at the College of Charleston now. I'm an assistant professor of literacy. One of the things that I've asked in the past from Hypothesis is, you know, I read a lot and I save a lot of online content. Typically what I do, and I've taught teachers how to do this, is basically use Evernote to basically use that as a dumping ground. The problem is that it's a dumping ground, and I can't use it after that. I've recently been a little bit afraid of Evernote, and you know, it seems like things are happening behind the scenes. I've switched over to Pinboard, and I've been moving a lot of my bookmarks to Pinboard, trying to make my work overt. But as we were just talking about, sometimes I look at a web page and I don't really care about all of the information. I care about one or two sentences. So a tool like this, I would love to copy a section of text or copy a section of a web page and say, this is the important part to me. This is my bookmark. I don't care about all the rest of the stuff. I want to bookmark this image or this graphic or this text or whatever. So that would be terribly powerful for me. Then somebody, just like on Digo or just like on Pinboard, somebody could see this is all of the public stuff that he has bookmarked or annotated and marked up over time.
Yeah, you know, one thing that, maybe to build on that comment, one of the things I was trying to do this morning as I was practicing was, because one of the things I think is powerful about annotating in a social platform like this is that you can also, you know, you can annotate for the teacher audience who know that will read this article, right? You can ask questions about pedagogy. How would you do this in your class? How would you overcome this barrier? If you know teachers are going to be looking at this text and you know that they're going to return to it, then it's a place for that kind of like discourse about the topic. But also what you can do is you can annotate this in order to talk to the author. And one of the things I was practicing with was, okay, I made an annotation, and let's just say I wanted to tweet it at Kathleen. Because Kathleen couldn't join us for this, but she said she would love to get questions about the articles and books. So you could annotate a paragraph, right? And you complete your annotation, maybe you ask your question on it. And when you're done, you post that annotation. You can go down and grab the link for it. When you do it, that link gives you its own web page, right? And so it's also a way of sort of distilling an important segment of the right? You could look at, you know, 20 annotations that students do about the State of the Union and then say, oh, I really thought this annotation is something we should consider as a class. And then that annotation, by just grabbing that link at the bottom, can become its own discussion. Right? And I thought that was powerful, but it's also an easy way to engage with these authors. Or, like I did this morning, somebody was reading something else on the New York Times, and they recommended an article, and I wanted them to respond to one paragraph in particular. So I highlighted the paragraph, attached an image, attached my question, and tweeted back at them just that piece. And I think that was that's one of the functions I really like about it, being able to get rid of all the rest and just have that annotation.
That's all great, Joe. But what about GIFs? Can I demonstrate adding a GIF?
I think
Yes.
you should.
I'm just kidding. I absolutely agree. I think that's, you hit it on the head. But I've got a GIF here from a Google image. I'm going to control-click on it and grab the image address. I'm going to go back to the text here. Got an annotation box open. This is the image button. Click on it. Paste it in. Save. So there you got mind blown.
Nice. I have a question that I hope without too long of an answer, can address potential privacy issues when people are using this with students in their classrooms. How are they signing up students on accounts? How is that information being made public, anonymous? What issues around privacy and also ultimately the collecting of this data, since Hypothesis has everything as a data trail? What are some of the conversations around that? You can follow up with me, separate from this, but I'd love to hear at least a touch on some of that.
Sure, I'd love to. Nice to meet you, Remy.
Yeah, Remy.
Remy, I'd love to follow up on and be in touch with everybody here, but thanks for that question. I mean, number one, I used to work at Rap Genius, and I've spent a little bit of time in the tech space, both for-profit and non-profit companies. And one of the reasons I came to Hypothesis is because they're doing it right, because they're really conscientious of the exact issues that you're talking about, both in terms of student privacy, but also in terms of user privacy and staying aligned with users of the tool in the long term. I mean, I think we all can know by now that Facebook is not necessarily aligned with us, but this is a completely different model for building an internet technology. One in which, first of all you need is an email address to sign up. You can be anonymous. You don't need to have anything. We do nothing with the data. In fact, I found it frustrating at times to even try to get information on users from the tech colleagues that have it at our company, because they're so serious about really protecting users and identity that they don't even share it internally. So there's nothing being done with the data, for that matter. I mean, this is not a data-driven model for internet commercialization. We're simply not doing that in any way, shape, or form. But anything that we do with user information, the only thing we really do is let you know if somebody responded to your annotation. And if we change something about our service or we add a feature, we might send a big blast saying, hey, folks that have Hypothesis accounts, we just added the ability to do X, Y, and Z. But that's really all you're going to get. But the big thing, I'll answer that question in a second, Kevin. The big thing, I'm just going to mute you out for a second because I think there's some background noise. Is that possibly you? Or?
Yeah, go ahead, probably.
I lost my train of thought there for a second, but the big thing is student privacy for me in terms of pedagogy, in terms of should a student be writing in public? I mean, this project, Letters to the Next President, about student writings in public. I believe we should push our students in that direction. I believe it's an important pedagogical step for them. I was never a good writer until I thought about my stuff as going to somebody beyond my teacher. That said, it's not for every student. It's not for every moment in the school year, and you need to have that privacy. So we have a groups feature. So if you are not comfortable annotating tomorrow's State of the Union in the most public of ways, or you say want them to annotate as a group tomorrow night, and then for Friday, revise an annotation for the public channel, you can do that. So there's a groups feature that is fully private. Only the people you invite to the group have access to it. So you can do completely private, safe space, whether it's practice or that's just where you want to be with your students, private annotation. So I hope, Ramy, that begins to answer the question. But really, I'm pointing to the terms of service. I'm actually giving a talk right at the university about this.
We're losing you, Jeremy.
Sorry, Jeremy. I think we got a little bit of.
You're auto-tuning.
Did that just me?
Nope, he was breaking up. Jeremy froze on us, so we have all the faith in the world that he will be back.
Caught in the interwebs. That's really helpful to hear. The follow-up question, which I won't take everyone's time with, of course, is what are the implications for for research? How do we understand what students are learning when they do this? But anyways, separate conversation.
Well, I think one of the features that I love on it is for those of you that I'll build online learning environments. My website is in WordPress. I build MOOCs in WordPress. There's a plugin for Hypothesis for WordPress. And one of the things that I stole from Doug Belshaw is that he was putting his course content out in GitHub and then saying, here, take a look at this and tell me if there's any errors or improvements or revise or iterate on my course content. Instead, what he's doing, and now I do, is I use the Hypothesis plugin for WordPress, and people can go and baked right into your site, they can mark up your site and give you feedback, give you revisions, give you revision history. I noticed monkeying around here that I don't know, this has probably been in there for a while, but they got the Creative Commons licensing in there. I don't know, are these annotations freely available on the public? Can I do a Google search and say Hypothesis annotations about, E. coli or whatever, Hypothesis annotations about a given subject, and pull up all of that through a search? That would be kind of interesting to see how much of a trail is this leaving out online.
Yeah, good point.
Or do I have to? I don't think I have to be logged into Hypothesis, but I'm wondering if those annotations are just available on their own. In the past, I asked him if we could, not just a bookmarking site, but make this almost like a replacement for Twitter. Could you highlight or annotate a piece and then hit tweet and then send it out as a message?
Hmm.
Yeah, we talked about that the other day. There's a little bit of friction there. You can't go directly from the. And I know you said, Jeremy, that you wanted to see the little icons in the bottom of each one of those text boxes, annotation boxes. And I would too.
Yeah.
How was it the other day? Because I wanted to. How was it that people were putting YouTube videos in such a way that the YouTube video was pulling up? If I just put in the YouTube share link, does it?
Yeah, I tried that. It works. Yep. That's Jeremy said. So you just pop in the URL of the YouTube video, and it plays right in the annotation. Well, one of the things that I guess I think about I like Hypothesis. I've tried Genius and liked it for what it was. Digo, Terry and I have done many of these annotations over a certain amount of time, and other people, including some of you, have joined in. But I still feel like I have a hard time figuring out where everything is. And I know that with Hypothesis I have my own kind of domain. I don't know maybe Jeremy can say what the term is. I'm not sure, where I can go and kind of see all my stuff there. But it still feels like it's all over the place, and I don't have an answer for figuring that out. But I do know that for teachers thinking about it, that's something that they're going to wonder about. How do I not control it, but how do I find the stuff? And I guess you were just talking about this a little while ago, Ian, about searching for things. And I don't have an answer.
I know exactly how you feel. It's one of the things, the database function in a tool like bibliographic tool like Zotero is just incredibly powerful, and because it is a database, because you can search it, because you can search within PDFs, and it just seems too much to ask of Hypothesis for them to have a database on it as well. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I have the same sort of problem is knowing where my stuff is and finding it.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost like when you're in, the Kindle app and you're reading, and you can mark up and you can annotate or highlight stuff in the Kindle app, and then you go back later and you're reading it and you look through the text and you go, oh, the sentence before, 7,000 people highlighted that, but I did not. So what's wrong with me? So it'd be interesting to see what other people do and how they mark up text and what they value and what other insight and what commentary, what videos and audio are out there.
Yeah.
So I mean, Kevin and Terry, you guys have your fingers on the pulse of this all the time. You're always testing out new stuff. What, looking at a tool like Hypothesis, what is it missing? Like, what would make it perfect?
Embeddable, rich text, embeddable stuff in the text boxes. For example, I would love to be able to use a tool like Vialogs in a text box to be able to improve, to. I know it's getting a little bit meta there, but I'd like to have that. I'd like to be able to, for example, copy an entire stream of Hypothesis stuff just automatically. A tool like Vialogs, it's got this little tool where you just click on it, and every comment that's been made there pops up, and you can copy it easily. What else? I don't know that more bells and whistles is going to make the tool better, though, Ian. It might make it worse. It might just gum it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting,
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain beauty to the simplicity of the design of it, right? Where it kind of just feeds off the side of the page, and and so there's pieces of it that are, I think that work really well. I have to go back and, I guess, look more about how other teachers have used it in the classroom. So, I know my students might be a little younger than some of the high school, I know they are younger than high school kids, but like to think of the viability. But I'm just looking at it for myself more than anything else. And I like using it, and then I realized later on that I can't find things, and maybe it's my own inability to search through the stream. It's not just Hypothesis either. It's just all these different pieces that feels like it's all over the place, and I need like a data Sherpa to bring it all to me when I want it. We're not there yet, I guess.
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I can. Sorry if I dropped off, and I don't want to derail anything, but a lot of what you guys were talking about. I know you're not. I appreciate the comment about simplicity, and we are going to try to keep everything very streamlined. But some of the stuff you're thinking about is really helpful for me to hear, and it is in the immediate product roadmap. Terry, especially what you were saying about knowing where your stuff is. This is a frustration of mine. I've been preparing a couple really big talks over the past month and annotating more than I ever have before. And unless I go text by text, using something like Zotero or bookmarks within my browser to organize things by text, it's hard to piece back together my thoughts on that I've had in annotations into something coherent. But we're working on a better stream, basically, a better way to search and filter the stream, and a better way to search and filter one's own stuff. That stuff is like being actively worked on. I had a product developer share some prototypes with me today. So that there's going to be some changes in how you can organize your stuff. And the other thing that's important that's coming that is a little farther down the road, but I think is crucial. I think this might have been, somebody mentioned this, is just the ability to export my annotations or export a set of annotations somewhere else. Probably we'll start off with plain text, but maybe eventually a Word document or something, so that, especially for students that are using this as a step towards writing something more formal, the ability to export your annotations and then recombine the parts into an essay or something like that. Sorry, I'm trying to respond to the bits and pieces I've heard over the past few minutes. I apologize if I derailed something there.
No, it's okay. I think one of the things that, the way I kind of hear that is, I think it's really valuable to keep that conversation going in terms of, like, how could the tool be better, and, like, what is it missing? The one thing that I kind of latch onto, especially, like, about this type of a project, is that, I really value, a tool that's being co-designed with educators, right? Just the idea that in this space, you're getting feedback from educators who are asking real questions, and though I kind of term it in my work like consumer reports, like, teachers should be really critical consumers of these tools.
Absolutely.
And it's important that they ask the tough questions. The thing that I think is really, perhaps sometimes is missing in those conversations is, like, why would I choose any tool over any other tool, because they all kind of compete so quickly, is the idea that there might be a crowd using one, and that there are genuine social opportunities if I use one, right? So the idea that like Twitter is important, or is powerful because so many people are on Twitter. The idea that like you can generate a massive conversation quickly on Twitter is powerful, more powerful than maybe the features of the tool. And I think when we use something like this and we're able to say to students, yeah, here are the features, here's how it works, here's what it does, here's what it doesn't do, but what you're going to see are responses from 20 other schools. I think that's the piece I want to leapfrog the consumer reports to get to that place where students have to like grapple with the idea that there's a crowd at work.
Yeah.
Right? And I think like that to me is sort of like new territory, that we've all skinned the cat of like how to assign and grade annotations. But the idea that we might also like get them to think about a crowd and how should we respond to another school? How should we respond to political thoughts that don't agree with ours when they show up in the State of the Union?
Mm-hmm.
I think that human piece is a big sales. It's a selling point for me. The idea that a bunch of people are going to use this tool, and that's where the best crowd is going to be. Because I want to engage with that filter concept and engage with as many ideas as possible.
Just an observation here about the process. I've been watching Karen just kind of move around on her screen, and I hadn't nearly thought about this before, but you could do a screencast of a person's habits as they are close reading, as they are annotating, and share it with other people and say, this is a particularly good example of somebody who skims and zeroes in on the important point, because I've never seen this before, where you can actually show somebody actually working, their mind at work, annotating. And this is very rich area for research for people. It's much like stuff that watches your eyeballs as it moves around. Heat sensors where attention on the screen. And I think it just occurs to me that there's a lot of potential here for figuring out how people actually work using an annotation tool.
Yeah.
In the past, I've used Storify as an assessment. So one of my classes, I would say, okay, each week I give you a topic or a theme, you go out online and you learn. I'll give you a couple starting texts, but I want you to go on Twitter, I want you to find personal learning networks, I want you to go teach yourself and document where you are learning this content, and then come back at the end of each week and go into Storify, and basically you tell me where you learned it and how you learned it. Instead, what I could do is, and I've talked before with Jeremy about this, I could just say to the class, here's our hashtag, you just learn throughout the week, and you just mark up each one of these places where you interact and you learn, and then I can go back. The nice thing would be that they could at the end of the week take their 15-odd markups or annotations, put them in one document, one web page, blog post, whatever, and then annotate that in between and say, first I went here, here's my link out on Hypothesis, have a little text box that says here's what I learned, here's another one, so they could document their learning over time across the internet.
So cool.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Joe probably, he's heard me say this a lot. A lot of us are talking, of course, about student learning, and as a former teacher, I'm certainly concerned with that, but I'm also very much aware that teacher learning is pretty poorly studied in some circles and often kind of not very well understood, particularly when it comes to new media platforms. And I'm finding, at least in my own experience, a lot of, I'm just getting fed up with Twitter chats. I find them to be a lot of kind of tweeting to the choir, a lot of kind of support statements that are not really substantiated, and really not a kind of, I think they're really important indicator that educators are self-motivated. There's a lot of interest-driven kind of engagement. There's a lot of kind of camaraderie around the need for teachers to be supportive of one another in a kind of professional, personal learning network. But I'm actually not sure that Twitter chats actually have learning processes or outcomes that are actually robust. Mm-hmm. And I'm reminded, seeing this group right now work on this document, that this kind of social active annotation that is linked perhaps across Twitter, across a Google Hangout, across an embedded, extension through our browsers, is a far more substantial indicator of educator learning or of designer learning right here, right now. It reminds me of, in religious communities you have like Bible studies of a given text or a given passage, or in academic circles you have like reading groups where aside from your research and aside from like a class, you're like, let's all read whatever this week, and we get together and we talk about it. And this seems to be, in and of itself, a far more kind of interesting and nuanced indicator that educators themselves can be learners than jumping on Twitter for an hour and patting each other on the back in a Twitter chat.
Yeah, and it goes back to what Joe said. I sort of had a post somewhat like this morning. The nice thing is, if you have a Twitter chat and you have a common read, then all of the links basically are, hey, go to this website and look at what this person said here, whereas you can have that dialogue right on the document. And then I feel like in a lot of these, a lot of us are in MOOCs, we facilitate MOOCs. I think I've had challenges lately thinking about, okay, well, if you give someone a prompt, even adding in one extra click or two extra clicks to go to a different document and try and look for text or whatever, you lose people. So having learners right on that document all together, seeing what other people are saying, that's a powerful moment.
Yeah.
We are getting very dangerously close to the end of the hour here, so I want to say a few things for the good of the cause. I'm refreshing here because one of the things I did was I tweeted out this morning that before we started, there had been one person who had gone through the text and highlighted. Actually, before, like as of this morning, one person had gone through this text and highlighted. They had highlighted 12 times, and then there were 6 commenters in the comments below. And now I'm looking, and we have 74 annotations right now, and I don't think that includes the discussion threads beneath them, because as people are having those discussions, it doesn't seem like that tally of annotations increases. So now I think it'll just be interesting as sort of like that's the after, right? Before the annotation flash mob, we had 1 commenter, 12 public comments, 6 comments beneath the article. Now what have we got afterwards? And I think that's important. So maybe we could talk about like takeaways and then say goodnight, but I think I would encourage everybody to, thank you so much for your time before, if I forget to say it, and if you have a chance to, blog quickly about this experience and push it out to Next Prez and tweet it at Jeremy or tweet a question to Kathleen, who is also a co-author of this piece. I think any kind of like reflective follow-up would be great, but let's just whip around and say like a takeaway, something you're leaving with, say whatever you want.
Am I still live? Can you hear me?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Sorry, I've been getting booted off every once in a while. I just want to say this is awesome. I really love these conversations. There's some new faces here that I haven't corresponded with, and I'm psyched to be face-to-face with you as much as we can here across the country. I'm really excited about the potential for tomorrow. I hope some of you will be on the State of the Union. I hope some of you will encourage individual students, sons and daughters, your classes, if you can really wrangle them together for a last-minute assignment. But I'm excited to see what happens at the State of the Union. I'll be tweeting it out. Hypothesis will be tweeting it out. There's a blog on Hypothesis about the State of the Union Annotate-a-thon that you probably have seen, where I'll be posting the link for the annotatable version of State of the Union. And finally, be in touch with me. I really want to be in touch with folks to continue this conversation, to support you if you're going to be using this individually or in classrooms.
For me, I'm thinking about, okay, Joe, you mentioned all the signal that has been generated here, and over and over again, it's never a problem to generate signal. It's when it becomes noise that you have a problem. And we have this incredible mass of annotations. What do we do with it? And I think this is a real challenge for teachers, is where do you go after you have generated the signal? You've prompted the signal, and a lot of signal means noise, unless you figure out a way to filter it. And I think the filter is, for me, the biggest challenge as a teacher. And what do we do with what we got? So that's what I'm going to be working on.
I think that brings up, the continued discussions about the art of curation, right? About yes, we have this that we just created together as we're talking, and trying to multitask doing this, but that next step, Terry, and how to teach not only ourselves but our students how to do is, okay, how do we take this and now make some meaningful piece out of it? Maybe it's what Joe said, if you can write a blog post and figure out what we went through, or what it was like, what was the experience like, and pull out some ideas. That's one way to do it. But I do think that's true. That kind of step from one to the next is crucial, and more than ever, how do we teach our kids to do that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've got my academic hat on here. I'm thinking about, open scholarship. I'm thinking about annotating kind of official knowledge and public, published research. You find an article in Nature. You get a bunch of academics to go on there and kind of give it a post-publication kind of peer review, right? I just, and I'm also, of course, thinking about teacher learning, which is the focus of my own research and work, as Joe knows, and what the applications are for this. Jeremy, we're definitely going to be in touch. I'm really fascinated by this, particularly the I know it's a trendy word, but I'm wondering about the kind of big data and the data trails that are coming off of this as more and more and more students are signing up and participating. I'm also wondering what facilitation of professional learning for educators looks like. And so in any case, most immediately I'm going to transition every single reading in my upcoming games and learning course into just essentially a public annotation. So I'll start playing around with it myself. Classes start for us next week.
Annotate all the things.
Annotate all the things. All the fields, all the things.
Annotate all the badge all the fields. I think that it's in my work I try to move people, individuals, students, teachers from readers to writers of the internet. I want people making, and breaking that down into a granular piece. It echoes what what Kevin and Terry were talking about. I think that I view it as we need to move our kids ourselves, and by ourselves I mean from higher ed all the way down to pre-K through 3. Move ourselves from consumers of online content to curators of content to creators, or constructors of content. And I think that curation piece sometimes we skip over or we gloss over, but it's terribly important. There's a lot of value in being able to look at online text and online content and say, okay, from my perspective as a more knowledgeable other, I find this section to be of value, or this section is garbage. And a lot of that happens on Pinterest, and then we scoff at it, or Learnus, and we scoff at it. But I think that we need, as a society, we have the content construction happening, and we're doing a lot of consumption, but we need a skin on top of it where we mark it up and annotate it, and we critically evaluate and remix and comment on all of that stuff. So annotate all the things.
Annotate all the things. I think we've got everybody except you, Karen. Karen, last words.
I just enjoyed it. Thanks, everybody, and look forward to seeing what happens tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, indeed. So thanks again for all for your time, and appreciate this. I sure appreciate the experimental willingness of this group and the experimental nature of the activity. So thanks so much, everyone, and next time we have one of these, you guys are first on the invite list.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, all.
Bye, all.
Ciao.